All right, people. I'm going to give you the lowdown. I'm going to tell you the things that people will not tell you about Bitcoin, before investing in it. And give you the inside knowledge right here. But before I do that, my disclaimer, I'm not a professional financial advisor. I don't give professional advice. Please don't take anything I say as legal or uh, financial advice. Um, Consult a professional. If you're dealing with a legal issue, consult an attorney. They could advise you. Pay for consultation fees. It's definitely worth it with the right lawyer, but you have to find a competent attorney who's experienced dealing with the situation you're dealing with. Um, and if you're dealing with financials, I say talk to a financial advisor. Talk to someone that is going to be in a fiduciary capacity. Would be my opinion of what you would want. Um, but that's again not a legal opinion. That's just me sharing my thoughts and concerns. I'm a stay-at-home dad who works, but um, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. You take what you want from how I look and whatever you want to think. But here it goes. Now that I got that all done, so Bitcoin follows a pattern, and it's like a very distinct pattern. Like when you hear "when in doubt, zoom out," it's like, what do you mean? Like, why are you telling me to zoom out? Like, look at it. If you look at the pattern that shows, you'll see there's a peak. Then there's, and I'm starting from December of 2017, where we had that peak. So I'd say if you want to get the full benefit of this, treat this like a podcast. Go pull up a computer and look at the Bitcoin prices as I'm going through this with you. But that's where we're starting at. There's a peak. Then there's this period of volatility after the peak where eventually we find the bottom. Then after that bottom, there's a steady increase period where eventually we jump up to a nice price, and then there's a little hesitation period where after we make that jump, there's some hesitation in the market and we fall down, but we bounce. And then after this bounce is what I call the floodgate period. And that floodgate period is where it's a run up into hitting the peak. So do that. Then the peak hits again. Then there's another period of volatility until we find the bottom. Then again, like I said, there's this once we find that bottom, the steady increase period. And then after that, the hesitation period. Then the floodgate period. And then again, we hit the peak, and so on. So it's a repeating pattern. So if we start from the peak of December 15th, 2017, or mid-December 2017, we see that there was a period of volatility, meaning Bitcoin price was just kind of hovering up and down, jumping up and down, going around until about May of 2019. In 2019, there was a nice jump, and it jumped up, and this steady increase period from that bottom, we found the bottom after the peak. It was in 2018, so it was actually a whole year. There was a whole year period of volatility where you were just bouncing around, and then we find that bottom. We find that bottom the following year in December, mid-December, and we begin our steady increase period. This steady increase period lasts about 150 days until we hit a nice jump. And that was in May of 2019, like I was saying. So after that jump, there's this hesitation period where we dip down, and that was about 35 days, right? Then after this 35-day hesitation period, we hit a bounce, and that was around, we hit that bottom of that hesitation period June of 2019, and then we bounced off of that, and there was this floodgate period for about 7 days. And then it was about June, end of June, there was the peak, end of June 2019. There we go. We hit that next peak. Now we have to go through our period of volatility, right? So if we look at the history, the period of volatility lasted about 286 days. So there was a period of volatility that lasted 286 days. This was about an 80-day decrease from the last period of volatility. So I think that's telling. I'm gonna go through that for each phase for this next round. So that period of volatility lasted, that 280 so days, 86 days, and we hit the bottom in March of 2020. Then we had a 395-day steady increase period where we just climb and climb and climb and climb and climb. Yes, there's little dips and dives between it, but it's going up the whole time. So that was a nice, it was a longer period. It was about 245 days more than the last round. So that increased. As we're doing that steady increase, we finally hit this nice jump, and that was about April of 2021. And then we had a hesitation period, and the hesitation period this time lasted about 90 days. So it's almost triple the time, 55 days more than the last time. So there was an increase in this hesitation period. But eventually we hit a bounce, and that was in July of 2021. And it took about 108 days for the floodgate period to finally meet a peak. So there was about 101 days more of a floodgate period here. Now we hit the peak. That was in November of 2021. That was last year. And now some people are saying January 22nd, that was our bottom. But that means that the period of volatility would have only been about 74 days. And that's a decrease of about 210 days. Now, is that possible? I mean, completely. I am hopeful that that's the case, and that we are now in this. We found the bottom, and now we're in this period of a steady rise. That's what I'm hoping, but I don't know. That's a big decrease. Like, if you look at it, there was one other number that decreased from that list, and it was an 80-day decrease. So if we were to try to use that as our gauge, we would be looking at, well, obviously we could probably look at the other numbers too, where there was huge increases, or there was a 245-day increase, there was a 55-day increase, and then there was a 100-day increase. So if we try to factor that in and we think about it, I don't know, maybe this period of volatility is still going and we may have a few more days, but I don't see it being as long as the other ones. I think it's going to continue to decrease, because I think if you think about the floodgate period, why was the floodgate period so long this time? I think the floodgate period was so long because there's way more people into it. There's way more adopters than there were the last two times. So I would say if we look at that as the metric and saying, all right, well, maybe there's more people involved. That's why there was this bigger floodgate period. That's why there was this bigger hesitation period. But that also would mean that there should be a smaller period of volatility before finding a bottom, like, or not. I don't know. This is all speculation and opinion, and so who knows what the real truth is. But my guess, or my guesstimate, based on this math, is that we have a few more days until we find the bottom, and then that's when we hit that golden period. So until we find that bottom, I'm going to be looking for that volatility, those swings. So it might swing up, and some people call this a fake out, where it swings up and then it just dives again. And if it swings up, I'm going to sell, and then wait for it to dive. And when it dives, I'm going to, buy back in. I'm going to leave that money in there, buy back in, and hope that we found the bottom at that point, and ride it out. Because I think maybe 30 more days of exploring a bottom. Could be more, could be 60 days, could be 90 days. I don't think we're going to get away that easy with a 74-day period of volatility. So that said, do your own research, do your own due diligence. Don't take this as financial advice. This is just my wild theory on this, based on the history that I just outlined. So my prediction is we're still going to find the bottom. I don't know what that bottom's going to look like. Could be, that 29,000 mark that people talk about. But after that bottom hits, it's going to be a nice steady rise. And I think the steady rise is going to be shorter. And then we're going to have a more volatile, jump to bounce, to jump, to bounce, until we find the peak again. So there you go. You got the secret inside information that nobody wants you to know. What are you going to do with it? I say do your own due diligence. Look at the numbers and see what it's telling you, and follow the spirit. All right, people. Trust no one.